Right now at the U.S. Bank Tower is Phil Murphy. He's the National Finance Chairman for the Democratic National Committee. Welcome to the show. Let's start with the numbers, the money numbers right away, and show our viewers how much the DNC has versus the RNC. It's total raise for the DNC, $90 million, and RNC, $193.5 million. Cash on hand for the DNC, $4.5 million, $69 million for the RNC cash on hand. Total spent, $89 billion by the Democrats, and Republicans have spent about $128 million. Phil Murphy, talk about the disparity here between the Democrats' numbers and the Republicans' numbers.
Good morning, Greta. It's great to be here. The numbers are a little bit out of date. Those numbers, as of the end of July, have changed dramatically. In fact, the DNC outraised the RNC in the month of July, and the cash on hand numbers narrowed dramatically. So we're catching up. One of the realities in an election year for the presidency is that when a party has the benefit of having a nominee in hand and working hand in glove with that nominee, the ability to raise money goes up dramatically. And the reality is the Republicans had John McCain as their presumptive nominee in early March. We had a great 50-state national primary, which we wouldn't trade for anything, that did not resolve itself until June. And we had, therefore, a couple of months where they were out there firing away hand in glove. We're catching up, and we will catch up.
How does Barack Obama help you catch up? I mean, there's been a lot made of how much money he's able to raise on his own.
Well, Senator Obama and Senator Clinton, and in fact, the rest of the field, each in their own respect, are prolific fundraisers. Senator Obama has rewritten the book. His appeal at all levels of contribution, from the $1 right up to the very highest contributions, he has enlivened our donor base unlike anyone we've ever seen before. So to be able to raise money hand in glove with Senator Obama is clearly a huge asset for the National Party, and we're taking advantage of that.
I want to get your reaction to a piece that was in the Washington Post yesterday in their newspaper, and it says Dean's 50-state strategy continues to generate debate. Read a little bit of it for you. It says Dean plowed money into a nationwide database of Democratic voters available to every party candidate, from White House hopefuls to school board contestants, put state Democratic communications directors on the national payroll, and instituted performance standards for local party operations. It was expensive, but now for about $120,000 to $150,000 a year per state, the structures put into place are seen as sustainable. The article goes on to say, when you go inside the article, it says the issue now is money, not so much Dean's ability to raise it, but his propensity to spend it. From January 2001, when Terrence McAuliffe took over the committee, through March 31st, 2004, the DNC raised approximately $127 million in funds that could be spent directly on campaign activities. Between January 1st, 2005 and March 2008, the DNC raised $190 million, considerably more. But the DNC had $27.5 million in the bank at this time 4 years ago, as opposed to $4.5 million now. How do you respond to that?
Greta, I think it's the best money this party's ever spent. Truthfully, to be able to have a party as active, as alive, as vibrant as we have in every state in the union and every territory, I might add, is an asset that at this point money can't buy. I believe firmly, and Governor Dean saw this before anyone, that if you make the modest, and frankly they're modest investments, even in the big states, year in, year out, in off-election years, and you check a whole series of boxes, which at one level may seem very mundane, but at another level are crucial infrastructural boxes to check, getting every precinct organized, getting technology that really works, having, as you mentioned, communication directors in all states, etc. Then when you get to the presidential election season, and you are at the height of that season, as we are now, and you drop in hundreds of campaign workers into that given state, it is a much more harmonious, much more productive investment. I'd also say, even in states, Governor Dean and we have been, it has been noted, in some cases criticized, that we've invested in so-called red states. I subscribe, as Barack Obama said famously 4 years ago, that there aren't red or blue states. We are the United States of America. And I think those investments, which may pay off at a different pace over time. In other words, if you look beyond just whether or not a candidate for the presidency wins a given state, but you look down the ballot at Senate, governors, House of Representatives, state houses, all the way down the ballot. We're seeing systematic progress in every state in the union, taking the Mississippi State Senate back last year as an example, having a competitive race for the Senate in Alaska. And I'd say even when we're not winning a state, to be able to make it competitive as a political matter and make the other side have to defend and pay attention to that state, I think itself is a huge asset. So I think this is the best money we've ever spent as a party.
All right, here are the phone lines for Phil Murphy. If you support Senator Obama, dial 202-737-0002. If you support John McCain, dial 202-737-0001. And all others, please call 202-628-0205. Phil Murphy is with us from Denver this morning from our from our studio at the U.S. Bank Tower at the Democratic Convention. First phone call comes from Jeffersonville, Indiana, Obama line. Good morning.
Good morning. I think it's absolutely wonderful what Barack Obama has done as far as fundraising goes, and the Democratic Party for that matter. We have got to get Barack Obama in office. And if it means that I have to give him $5 or $10 at a time, then that's just what it means. I will gladly give it to him, because we have got to get the Republicans out of office.
Thanks, caller. Phil Murphy, is there any difficulty trying to get money for the DNC when you have a caller like that who's very passionate about Barack Obama and is willing to give him $5, $10, $15? Does that pull away from your ability to get money into the DNC coffers?
No, I tell you, the passion that caller just expressed is exactly what's making this year so special for us. First of all, it's great to hear from someone in Indiana, a state that we believe is very attractive and a great state. So thank you for the passion. Secondly, we're all in this together. I no longer, nor have I since Senator Obama became the putative nominee, we don't think about this in terms of what he's doing versus what we're doing. We're doing this together. And our most important first dollar is to fund his campaign, and then we get to the DNC. And I love the fact that we've got folks all over this country, not measured now by the millions, who are willing to put up, in some cases, sacrifice $5, $10, $25, $50. Dear money in a very difficult economic environment. That's the fuel that's making us go right now.
We've read articles about the lavish parties that are being thrown in Denver, and we've also seen the amount of work that goes into getting the Pepsi Center ready for this convention. Does any of the DNC money go to the convention and the parties and the working and all around it? Describe that for us.
Yeah, the convention themselves, the conventions themselves are actually separate entities, so they're not part of the federal money-raising operation, which I'm a part of. So I'm an officer of the party. I raise money only for federal purposes. In terms of the perception of the so-called lavish parties and whatnot, I think we've never been more democratic as a fundraising matter as a party. And that last caller is a great example of it. Nobody is more equal than anyone else in our operation, and no one has moved that needle more than Senator Obama. Fundraising has become extraordinarily democratic, and it is millions now who are standing up and not only voting, but voting with their wallets. So I think the notion that there is the so-called small smoke-filled room, I think that's a notion from yesterday. This is as open, transparent, and as democratic as it's ever been.
All right, first phone call here, our second phone call, Winslow, Arizona, McCain line. Go ahead.
Yes, I was wondering, how do you could get either? I've kind of tossed up between McCain and Obama, but I'm kind of leaning towards McCain. But these guys never come to little towns like Winslow instead of going to big cities like Phoenix and Tucson and that. How do they get up here towards our area and see what our problems are?
Well, that's a very fair point, and just don't ever forget one thing. Your vote in your town counts just the same as the vote in New York City or Chicago or Los Angeles. So most importantly, your interest and your willingness to get out and vote is the most important thing. I think for me, sir, it's a very clear call. But I love the fact, and I love the fact people are taking this so seriously and they're willing to do their education in this election. I think it's a historic election. I think many of us think that. I think when you really study this up, sir, I think it becomes very clear that you've got an opportunity to either break for a different future. And I look at it recently in terms, most importantly for me, economically, as I look at middle-class America. I think there's an opportunity to break for the future in a new way that addresses the needs and issues of the middle class in this country. Or it is to stay with what we've been doing. And I don't think what we've been doing is working, personally. So I'd encourage you to go through a series of issues: economy, healthcare, foreign policy, national security, energy, to pick 5. And I'd make a little bit of a balance sheet. Obama on the left, McCain on the right, and just write down what you read or what you hear about each of these two candidates. I think when you do that, it becomes quite clear. It certainly is to me, in both little towns and big cities in this country, that Senator Obama is the choice, and it's a compelling one.
Phil Murphy, you've been the finance chair since May 2006. Walk us through a typical day, your responsibilities. What do you have to do?
Well, I don't want to cop out on your question, but Greta, there's probably no such a thing as a typical day. The convention is a little unusual because we're all gathered together, so many of us, so many great Democrats together. I travel a fair amount. I try to go all over the country in my 2.5 years of doing this, and I've traveled to as many so-called red states as I have to blue states. I want to see our investments up close. So I have always thought that if you're going to sell someone, particularly people you've never met before, on an investment in a political party, that you owe it to them to go out and see how that money's being spent. So I spent a lot of time in places like Alabama. I was with some of my good friends from Alabama last night, as an example. So I travel a lot. I work the phones a lot. The pace right now, as we're 70 days away from the election, as you can imagine, is quite high. So there's still a fair amount of travel, but I work the phones a lot.
How many phone calls a day, you think?
Oh, my goodness gracious. Dozens. At this stage, probably hundreds. In some cases, they're to folks I know, and I'm going back again and asking for their generous support again.
What's that phone call like, to have to go back to a donor and say, we need some more, we need some more? Talk about that for our viewers.
I think the cause is such a good one, and the money is so well used, it's easier than I ever thought it would be. So I think, Greta, it's a question saying, listen, you've been really helpful to us. You've been there. You believed in what we're doing. Let me tell you, we need some more, because we can't take anything for granted here. We can't, as I say to people, we can't take one vote or $1 for granted. We're going to play this game assuming it's going to go into triple overtime, and if it doesn't, and it turns out we win it in regulation, that'll be a rich problem.
Does that mean that you're raising money for potential lawsuits after this election?
No, I'm raising money for the election.
Okay.
Completely focused on the election.
All right, Santa Fe, you're next. Obama line.
Hello, my name is Sophia, and my husband and I have voted for over 40 years. We have never contributed, except locally, to any candidates until now. We were inspired in our teens by John Kennedy, but had no money. And now we're very inspired by Senator Obama and have both contributed to his campaign. And we will continue to do so. We hope everyone that he inspires will do the same.
Santa Fe, how have you contributed? Have you gone online, or have you sent in a check? How have you done so?
We've sent in a check.
Okay. Phil Murphy.
There are many people, Greta, like our friend from New Mexico. As I mentioned, not only is this the most democratic fundraising era in our history, in any party's history, and frankly, this is in world history, not just in our countries. But secondly, our friend is like many who has been inspired this year. So many millions for Senator Obama, and I have to say, likewise for Senator Clinton and others who ran in our extraordinary field this year. And the inspiration, it plays out in different ways with different people, but across the country, it has had a material and continues to have a material impact on the ability to raise money.
Phil Murphy, there's stories today, and it was the talk yesterday, that Democrats are not seeing any bounce in the polls from Obama picking Joe Biden as his VP. But are you seeing a bounce in your coffers for this week during the Democratic National Convention? And are you continuing to fundraise through this week?
We are fundraising through this week. I'm spending a lot of time, it's a great question, on phones. We've got a big forward calendar in September. So when not in the hall, I'm spending most of my time, as are many of my colleagues, on the telephone, calling from Denver. Joe Biden is a great pick for our party in so many ways, and there's no question he will help both politically and financially. And in terms of the polls, that's probably above my pay grade. I'm hardly a political expert. As I say, we're assuming that this is tight, and it's going to remain tight.
So are you, if I could go back to the original question, are you pulling in more money this week, and can you give us an idea of how much you've been able to raise this week alone?
I don't. We don't report but once a month, so I can't give you a number for this week. But there's no question, Senator Biden is a big kick in our step. There's no question about it. Not just for this week.
Okay, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, others line. Good morning.
Yes, hello. I used to be a Democrat. My husband and I used to give to the party. We will never give another cent to any Democrat or the party. And the reason is because 143 days in the Senate does not give someone the experience to be president. Number two, the way we were treated, we were not always Clinton supporters, but did come around to supporting her. The way we were treated, the way she was treated, is something that we will never forgive or ever forget. I think this is all a shrew. It's a ruse on the American people. For any color, 65% of white elites support Obama. And, you know, he does not care about any of us.
Phil Murphy, how do you respond to that?
Well, I have to. One of the great things, we're the United States of America, and I have to respect the opinion, but I obviously disagree completely. But it's a great country, and again, I have to respect our friend's opinion, and I hope that maybe with the passage of time, she will come around. I'd make a couple of quick points, Greta. First of all, I'm a huge fan of Senator Obama's, and I believe if you look at his character, his leadership, and how he has changed the lives of many and how he is prepared for this office, I think closer inspection only helps. Secondly, we are a party. As important as this man is, as important as Joe Biden is, as important as this election is, I would also encourage our friend to look at the fact that this is a national party, and we're supporting races from the very bottom of the ticket at the county and cities and towns all the way up to the presidency. And I believe time in and time out, we're more right than the other side. And if you look at it as a party matter, I think you can get there. Lastly, I'm a huge fan of Senator Clinton's. I've known her a long time. Many of her supporters I count among my friends. I know there's been an enormous amount written and talked about. I thought she was fantastic last night. She is doing everything she can to help Senator Obama and Senator Biden get elected. And I completely see us going forward as one party.
There's been articles since she left her presidential bid about her debt and how much she has and her ability to fundraise to get rid of that debt. Can the DNC help her with that debt at all, or how does it work?
The DNC is not involved in that. We're involved. We need to raise every penny and have every penny available for the election this fall. I know many folks are contributing to help Senator Clinton in that worthy cause, and I'm sure they will continue to. But we are focused on the election completely.
Okay, Littlestown, Pennsylvania, on our line supporting John McCain.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Go ahead.
I would like to ask the gentleman a question. Basically, the fundraising part, the Democrats and Republicans now don't seem to be a whole lot different to me. It just seems that I have one Democrat that I really believe in, and I'm a Republican for McCain, but Barney, it seems like that for change, the candidate hasn't said he, anything new as far as like drug marijuana reform, the medical marijuana issue, which Democrat Barney Frank put a resolution HR 5843 forward, and I haven't heard any of his views on that. It's almost like it's radioactive if he mentions it.
I don't want to disappoint you, but I've got really nothing to add there other than I'm a big fan of Congressman Barney Frank.
All right, we'll move on then to Killeen, Texas. Obama line. Good morning. Killeen, Texas.
Oh, good morning. How you doing?
Good morning.
Yeah.
Good morning.
As far as the fundraising thing goes, I think y'all do a very good job of doing it. My question is, what are we going to do about this war situation? I mean, I feel like they're rocket people. If they want to stop all this terrorism stuff, they got to stand up and be willing to do it themselves. I mean, we can't be there for no 100 years trying to solve a problem that they got to solve themselves. Thank you very much.
Thanks for calling. First, a comment about Texas. We have a lot of friends and a lot of support in Texas. In my judgment, Texas is a great example of a state that's a lot closer to coming toward the Democratic side of the ledger than many outside of Texas would guess. Whether it's in the State House and the state legislature, whether it's Rick Noriega running for Senate, any number of different barometers. I think the fact that George Bush is from Texas has masked great progress and a reemergence of our party. So it's good to hear from a friend in Texas. Again, I don't profess to be an expert in policy or politics. Clearly, I support Senator Obama's position and the Democratic Party's position, indeed, on Iraq, both the historical perspective and the perspective going forward.
Phil Murphy, given your long career at Goldman Sachs, I wanted to get your reaction this morning to the front page of the Wall Street Journal. The headline is "New Credit Hurdle Looms for Banks." And it says the problem highlights how the pain of the credit crunch, now entering its second year, won't end soon for banks or the broader economy. The Federal Deposit Insurance Corp said on Tuesday that its list of problem banks at risk of failure had grown to 117 at the end of June, up from 90 at the end of March.
I saw the same article, and it doesn't surprise me. We're in a very difficult circumstance, and I take my hat off in many respects. We mentioned Barney Frank, who I think is the best thinker. I'll go out on a limb and say the best thinker on Capitol Hill about markets and the economy. Secretary Paulson, my former boss, is a very good American. I think he's doing everything he can. This is a very complicated, very difficult economic cycle. I think it could last for some period of time.
Some period of time. Are you willing to give us a timeline? A year or 2 years?
I'm not smart enough. I think the housing, I think the housing market and the housing slump is a multi-year phenomenon. I'm not smart enough to know whether or not I can say the same thing about banks. I do think at the end of the day, I've been a believer from way, way back. I grew up in Massachusetts, and I would say we were middle class on a good day. My belief economically is, notwithstanding how complicated this world is, very simply, as the middle class goes, so goes the whole show. And so I look at what can we do to address not just the immediate burden in the middle class, in many cases related to housing and health care and job security, but also what can we do so that generationally, more often than not, we'll have enough in place to protect systematically the middle class in our country, give them security, optimism, job growth, etc., health care for all. And I believe in both the short-term policy sense as well as in the long-term sense. I like what Senator Obama says, the policies that he believes in. And again, it's a complicated world. This is not a one-trick solution. It's going to be a complicated world, requires a nuanced, complicated set of solutions. But I think this is a tough environment that's here for a while, and boy, I believe in Senator Obama, and his policies are our best shot to deal with that environment.
Okay, Monroe, North Carolina. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, C-SPAN. Mr. Murphy, I would just like to know, what do you think the outcome of the elections will be when the vote counting is going to be outsourced to the very company, Diebold, that makes the voting machines? I mean, with the outcome with Karl Rove's shenanigans down there in Florida getting Hillary out of the primaries, I mean, how can we really call this a real fair election?
Phil Murphy?
Well, again, the whole voting machine question, I'm certainly not an expert in, but I appreciate our friends' concerns. I think we made a lot of progress between the infamous Florida of 2000 up through too many long lines in Cuyahoga County, Ohio in 2004. I think we're hardly perfect yet, but I think the results we saw in the midterm elections in 2006 were yet another indicator of the way we're spending money as a party, in the sense that we're preemptively trying to anticipate whether it's voting machine issues, access issues, fairness issues. I love, as I said a short while ago, I think the money we've spent over the past several years is the best money we've ever spent in the party. And I believe, in part, some of that money was spent on exactly the caller's concerns. Is it perfect? I certainly can't say that I know it is, but I'll tell you, we will be preemptively prepared for issues like that.
Indianapolis, you're next.
Yes, good morning, C-SPAN, and good morning, Phil.
Good morning.
I'm just so happy I got in. This is my first time calling. But
that makes two of us.
Yes, and this is my first time seeing you as well. But, you know, I think Hillary did good last night and bringing the rest of the party together. I think she really did good to mention Harriet Tubman and her struggle. And as far as Barack Obama is concerned, I really appreciate him running for president. I will be voting for him. This is my first time voting as well. A lot of people I hear talk about we don't know Barack Obama, but do they really consider the rest of the people in the United States who don't know all of the presidents that came before us? And did we actually know George Bush? Did we actually know Bill Clinton? Did we know Jimmy Carter? No, we didn't. But we just have to choose from what they say, and we get behind them, and we just hope that they win.
Thanks, caller. Phil Murphy, let me ask you about the lineup for tonight. We're going to hear from President Bill Clinton and the Senator Joe Biden. When you have an appearance like one from former President Bill Clinton, how does that help fundraising?
Oh, President Clinton is one of the most prolific fundraising phenoms in the history of politics in this country. And there are millions of people out there who are huge fans of his, who look back at his stewardship, particularly of our economy, and only wish we could have the same circumstances today. He connects with a whole broad swath of our party, and he's a huge, huge asset for us.
Last phone call here. Asheville, North Carolina, McCain line. Good morning.
Good morning. This is the first time I've been able to call in also. And I just wanted to comment on the fundraising. I'm going to vote for Senator McCain. And I feel like that if Senator Obama is elected, these people are going to need their money, because I think taxes are going to be so high that we'll not be able to pay them from all the things I've heard in his talk. And
Phil Murphy, can you comment on that?
Yeah, first of all, again, I love the fact people are engaged. In the last two states, Indiana and North Carolina, are great examples of states where Senator Obama is actively competing. I think that alone is a great statement about both the senator and about the investments we've made as a party. I actually think the vast majority of Americans will benefit in many respects from Senator. In fact, I think all of us will benefit, but very literally in the sense of taxes that they pay. I think the broad swath of Americans, if you're making less than $250,000 a year, which is the vast bulk of us, you're going to benefit as a literal sense in terms of your tax rates from Senator Obama. That's in a very narrow sense. In a broader sense, again, I'm a huge believer. As the middle class goes, so goes the whole show. So all of us, I believe, will benefit from job growth, security, health care for all, immediate policies to address the housing crisis, etc. So I think economically, is this a painful period? Clearly. Will things turn around on a dime? I can't believe that they will. But if we have this call again 5 years from now, we'll look back, we're going to say, you know what? We are better off today than we were 5 years ago under President Obama.
All right, Phil Murphy, we'll leave it there. Head of Financing for the Democratic National Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Greta.
That does it for Washington.